Here we go. Cool. All right, 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, boom. Hi, this is Eric Stromquist. Welcome to Control Talk. Now, your smart notice video cast and podcast for the week ending March 15th, 2020. This is episode 354. Where we talk about all things smart noting controls and HVAC controls. And what would a conversation about controls be without your co-host and mine, the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only, Kenny Smyers, the control man, football playing, secret agent man from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, welcome to the show. Big dog.
Oh, thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. Again, I'm in a kind of a bluesy mood here because of all the negative stuff going on. But, it's very important to maintain, a good disposition and positive, positive attitude because despite this coronavirus and despite, some of the sad news we've had over the week, things go on. And we can only make sure that we're participating with the corrective things that are being proposed, avoid crowds and do that good stuff. In this Western Pennsylvania area, Pittsburgh, that I live in, we're really taking a real, just everything stopped. Nobody's moving. Very few people are traveling. All events, everything's closed and shut down. From school, the majority of schools are closed. All the colleges are doing remote learning, and even Cinemark is sending out information about they're cleaning their facilities after every movie and all this other stuff. But it's really, really, really an interesting time. It seems like we're at war or something with good thing not with people, but with something that's larger than life, and it's really changed. A lot of people's attitudes and whatever. You can't buy toilet paper, you can't buy sanitary wipes, at stores anymore. So and they're looking at 2 to 3 week backlogs. So that's what's on the horizon. But despite that, the control world goes on, and we still do our jobs because we're able to do a lot of that remotely. So some of the technologies that we always talk about and whatever. I know a lot of contractors are able to do a lot of their service work, support on the internet. So as long as that stays up and at, we're going to keep moving and grooving. What about you down in Atlanta?
Well, I'm kind of wondering if it's a harbinger of things to come. I mean, we've always talked about these virtual worlds eventually happening, and I wonder if this is people are not just going to find out, well, wait, we really don't have to go to the office as much or whatever. And you think about you stuff delivered to your door. You got FedEx, you got UPS, you got the Uber Eats that brings food in and out. So it's disconcerting, but and I think we're being cautious, which is really smart. But by the same token, I think we'll get through this. It sounds like China's already sort of got it under control, and that's where it started. And I think we'll probably catch up very soon.
Well, yeah, but we haven't hit it's happening on different levels, and it means different things. There's the social level, there's the economic level, there's there's different things that affect people. But I think what we all need to understand is that there's going to be a long-term consequence to this that we don't even have a ability to understand. The government's preparing $50 billion, for economic support small businesses and people that are going to be out of work and whatever, because just in the airline industry, the pause is going on in Disney and all these people that make, live and die during this March Madness, the St. Patrick's Day parade, all these restaurants, all these people that invested, all the big shows that were unfortunately canceled, that doesn't go away. There's an economic deprivation that occurred in that absence of activity that, will eventually, trickle into the economies at large, restaurants, everybody that makes money enjoying people's occupant presence, sporting events. Imagine being one of the owners for one of the teams, hockey or whatever. It's just so the good thing is that we've talked to a lot of intelligent people here just recently. We got a couple of people on the show, and we talked offline with people how they've been prepared and how you get half glass or the water's half empty or half full. It's very important to pick the top side of that, and that, you know, it will come around. And then, and again, like you said, I think we're going to work through it. It's interesting to see now that how the supply lines will be affected by people and the products being made, where dependencies in areas of the world that were shut down, basically, you know, and then all the reserves are going to be absorbed, you know. So it's going to be challenging, you know. But I think with every challenge like this, this is the measure of people. It tests the mettle of societies, and I think United States, again, all the people I talk to, and I've talked to people in California. You know, we just talked to somebody in Canada. Excuse me.
Oh,
The
Kenny,
will go
Kenny,
on.
Kenny, we're gonna have to quarantine you, buddy. I heard that cough.
You know, see, that's where I'm getting at that age right now where I don't take anything for granted. You know, my wife and I,
Right.
we're playing. They say wipe things down, do this, do that, and the other. I tell you what, I'm
We
Roger Rebanek.
right.
He took a trip and he took a picture of himself on the plane. He had gloves on, he had the mask on, and you know, he wiped down everything on the plane. You know, so
It's funny.
because
Funny. We got this single guy in the neighborhood, Jim, and we saw him the other day. He said, "Yeah, he had a date over to the house, and she coughed once. He made her put a mask on."
no kidding
So,
today.
but yeah, you know what, dude? I think we'll get through this. I mean, I think if there's a silver lining to this, I think, you know, unless your health is already compromised, you're probably not going to die from this. And as my wife said, who, you know, is in the medical profession, I mean, 300,000 people a year or more die from the flu every year. 300,000 people or more die from the flu every year. And we're not freaking out about that, right? So, um, and my understanding is, unless you have a health compromised system already, you're not going to die. You know, it just is spreading. So they'll get their hands around this. But I think it does, you know, bring us to probably our first thing we need to talk about today, which is, you know, we just got off the phone with Therese Sullivan, Ed Merwin. You know, I think, are doing the right thing. They've had to postpone the big conference in San Diego, and, you know, they're super bummed about that. But I think they're going to put together some ideas to keep the community involved and take care of the community. But so if you were planning on going to San Diego and haven't heard yet, you know, that conference has been postponed. I think they're talking about maybe putting it off to the fall or whatever. But I think they're going to come up with something really cool in the meantime that we'll let you know about as soon as they get it ironed out.
Well, yeah, the NFMT show down in Baltimore that was for this week. It's postponed too, and I think the hardest part when you postpone something is people have already put a lot of money in. But to the Tritium Niagara Summit folks, they've reimbursed. They're reimbursing everybody. They're going to start everything back. You know, some people are trying to hold on to things and then reschedule them. So there's like the concerts even are being canceled. So what do you do with the tickets you bought? You know, each one has a, you know, a response to it. But I think the NFMT, they're going to reschedule for, I think, August, so that, you know, so you know, you have to pay attention to the people when you travel to make sure that things are coming back. But yeah, I think that it's going to make us all think about the world differently, like you said, you know, about many things. You know, I know my daughters, they're working from home. They have the ability to function almost at 100% without being inside the building. So if that could be the case, and people really and truly are testing this, that could have a ripple effect that nobody's really focused on
Right.
right now.
Well, I know at Stromquist and Company, you know, all our people work remotely. The only people that are in the building right now are the counter people and the warehouse people. So business as usual at our place, because we've always rotated people in and out where they could work from home anyway. So you know, like I said, I think the supply lines is the big thing. But dude, let's talk about something happier, man.
Well, you know what? Let's just stay in the funky mood here, because we gotta say goodbye to a champion that we had the pleasure of meeting in
That's
Chicago,
right. Yeah.
and it was one of the most exciting moments. I mean, there's certain moments of the Control Trends Awards where I felt you know, caught up in the emotion on the stage, and it was Michael Newman, who was largely considered the founding father of BACnet in the BACnet protocol. That he lived a legendary life, an amazing life. You know, pilot, you know, NASA physicist. Went to Germany, lived in Germany for many years as a young student, and picked up the language and mastered it, and then went on to become a very successful facility manager at the Cornell University in New York, and really set the pace. In fact, he worked with a guy named Hans Kranz, who we also had the benefit of inducting into the Hall of Fame. So we met the people that were responsible for the BACnet protocol, and
Yeah.
Michael Newman was given, you know, primary credit. So it's a sad day. 77 years old. We say goodbye to Mike.
Yeah.
He leaves a legacy to an industry well served.
Yeah, well, he was a super nice guy too. Really,
He
really
really
good
was.
guy.
Yeah.
So rest in peace, Mike. And
All right, now we can let's get cheerful now. Okay, that
yeah,
was the last funky.
well, yeah, that was the last funky thing. And then before we bring our guest on, we had one other post. If you haven't seen it yet, we had the 10-minute official Control Trends Awards highlight reel from the Control Trends Awards down in Orlando. Our artiste that we work with, Vladimir, put that together. And what did you think of that, Kenny?
Well, those are always near and dear to my heart. Vlad does such a tremendous job, but it was the capture of all the people that won. And very few times were we able to do that and put that in a shorter segment, like 10 minutes of actually the presentation of the award from either Mark or Kim or one of the guest presenters, Lisa Woods, and so on. But to get that in one moving segment was really fun. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great show. It's already come and gone. It seems like a year ago already, but heck, that was only February 2nd. So
Yeah.
it's a little over a month away,
A little over
or
a
a month past. Yeah.
month ago for sure. And look, the new website is up and going. We've got a lot of positive comments about that. And, Kenny and I'll start posting a lot more now that that site's up and going. So appreciate you guys' patience with that. And
We have one more post. We just want to mention Marnik Muslak, the product manager for Global Controls 5. She wrote a really interesting paper, kind of a white paper style of the triac versus relay. When to choose a triac over relay. It's actually a very good engineering piece on the life cycle of a triac versus a relay and the noise in certain areas where if you do have a choice, and triac is a better option, has longer durability, and it also is quieter. So therefore, in certain applications, it would be a better choice.
Global Control 5 does some great stuff, and they were winners of the Control Trends Awards this year too. So shout out to them, and you guys keep on doing what you're doing. You're really adding a lot to the industry over here in North America. You've been doing it in Europe for a while, so congratulations. And Kenny, with that, hey, talk about global players. How about introducing our guest this week?
Eric, I'd love to. We have the Chief Technology Officer from Delta Controls, Chris Kwomg, and this guy is really going to open our eyes to what's going on from the Delta perspective. Welcome to the show.
Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, guys. Glad to be here. Look forward to a good chat.
Oh, we're looking forward to it too. Well, listen, before we kind of get into the meat of things, because Delta is definitely a mover and a shaker, one of the great companies in our industry. How did you wind up in building automation controls, and how did you wind up with Delta?
I have actually worked for Delta for about 27 years now. I was in more of the industrial controls coming out of university. I worked in the telecom industry a little bit, some other different, manufacturing and steel industry and the oil industry for a while, trying to find my way. But I was always very keen on doing embedded systems and operating systems. So I'm very much driven from the technology world and developing products over the last 20, 30, 32 years. So I've seen a lot of evolution of technology in the automation space, building automation as well. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
For our listeners who might not know, and probably everybody knows, what makes Delta so special?
I think Delta is one of those rare gems in an industry where the collection of people, the collection of partners that we have, the collection of customers, of consultants, everybody that's involved in the relationships with Delta has really been fostered as a very tight group, very tight family. There's a lot of really good communications that goes on amongst the group, and I think that rounded out and how we've evolved that kind of culture is a very big part of what makes Delta successful. And where we've been able to take our products, but also, help take the industry.
Well, Chris, I'm learning more and more about Delta every day, but I was really impressed by the way Delta came together. So you had Delta Electronics, you have Delta Controls, and then you've even partnered now with Lloyd-Tech. But I mean, you've got some massive, like you said, resources and talent there, and now that the building automation world needs so much of this technology that's available, we need it to get put in, executed. So what is Delta doing to get into some of the major markets? I know you guys are already players in the unified integration space, but what does Delta have to get into the deep markets in North America?
Yeah. So that acquisition of Delta Electronics, Delta Controls, Delta, that whole collection or group that we put together, it's very aligned with the culture, aligned with the what our vision is moving forward in how we need to be able to have better energy control processes and a better management of energy, driving to net zero, better world. So when you look at the breadth of the different technologies, the breadth of the different products, it's really given us an opportunity to try to bring that all together and to create a more uh, smart building. Although the definition of a smart building kind of changes over the years. Um, you know, it's a building that can adapt much more quickly to the needs of the utilization of the building, as far as how much energy it consumes, as far as how people occupy it. So what we're envisioning and driving towards is a smart building that actually more adapts to the occupants and the use of itself, of the building itself, and adding more components and adding more technology companies and more interoperable content within that building is really allowing us to achieve that goal.
Well, right. And Kenny, I've been tracking this for a while, Chris, but it seems like people are really having trouble attracting great talent in whatever industry you're in. And it seems like one sure way to maybe get cut off their list is not to have a building that sort of is emotionally available or symbiotic or whatever. And that's the trend we're seeing, but it seems like you guys are sort of in tune with that. So speak about that, if you will.
Yeah, that's something that we've seen evolve over the years. I don't think that's lost on anybody, but the users of buildings over the last 30 years have changed somewhat. And it's not only that, it's really the demographics of the people that are in those roles today. It's more significant, that change. From the generation that's coming up to the generation that's leaving, you see an expectation that's different. And so what we're really trying to stay in tune with is identifying those users and the classic personas of those users. What are their challenges? What are their expectations? How do they want to live their day through occupying a building, unoccupying a building, and how mobile they are. So focusing it around understanding who they are, and providing interfaces, visualizations that are useful to them so they can actually interact with the building. That becomes more and more important as the building itself becomes more of an entity itself. And so what we've done is really focused all of our development around really doing a deeper dive into understanding the users, where we actually bring them into the whole process of developing the system. And they participate in that. Are we actually solving the problems? What are your pain points? We go through that deeper dive, and I think that's the way the world needs to start thinking along those lines moving forward.
Right. Right. Well, as you're hearing stuff from customers, they're talking to you. What are some of the things you're hearing that they want their buildings or their control systems to be able to do within their buildings?
A lot of it is flexibility. I've been doing this for a lot of years. One of the strengths of our products and our system is the flexibility that it gives engineers who are actually engineering the different systems in the building. And with a more mobile world, we have a lot of hot desking going on. There's a lot of more mobility of people occupying a building and unoccupying a building. And that requires us to really look at, providing better interfaces to people who are there on different schedules, who require different assets within the building. So that becomes more and more of an expectation, but it's not just that. It's also it's tying things together in more seamlessly. And in the past, the control industries had this very this fragmentation that's been hard to connect all the pieces together seamlessly. One different group is responsible for a different system, and how do you get all the systems to play nice? So that is an advantage that we have at Delta Controls, because we do have this opportunity to bring in products and bring it into the system nice and cleanly. I know in the past, many different companies have tried that. I think there's more of a convergence today than there has been in the past decades, because of that need to provide this better experience in the building. And the building owners, whether they be large technology companies, whether they be financial institute that wants to provide this better experience within the building to attract talent, to keep talent. They're asking for those kind of things as well. So yes, it's really about bringing more value to occupants within the space, why they would want to be there. Might be lighting, might be obviously the HVAC control, but it's also the access within the building. It's connecting to visualizations in the space, turning on monitors, turning off monitors, changing feeds inside the space, blinds, getting light into the building, of course, fresh air. All of
Well,
that all
Chris,
ties together.
it's not black magic. It takes technology, and it takes some significant hardware to do that. And that's where I want to transition into some of the things that we saw recently at AHR, and that was namely the O3 hub sensor. Tell us a little about that little fabulous gem.
So the O3 hub sensor is really a convergence of a number of different sensing technologies that we've designed into one product. So that's kind of a convergence of better information. The whole intent of that product is to understand more what's going on within the spaces, and providing it, providing the system better content as far as what's going on, so you can provide better HVAC, air quality, lighting, knowing more thermal masses within the space. That's where this is all headed. I think it's a great product that provides a lot of value because of that convergence of different sensing. But with the sensing technology evolving faster and faster, and even with the software machine learning that you can do within the products today, which we've deployed inside of that product, you can do more even further into the future. So it's really focused around that, understanding what's going on in the spaces and being able to build an experience within the spaces that is much more flexible for the more mobile environment and the different types of uses within spaces.
Well, I mean, just again, the sensor itself, when you say about like you said, the integration versus fragmentation, whatever, and then you've named very, very great presentation as far as the integration of a total room, and you're talking about the blinds, you're talking about shading, you're talking about HVAC, you're talking about lighting, you're talking about CO2, you're talking about things. How can one sensor provide that? I mean, so it must have taken you a while to develop. I mean, and because you're talking about the integration of like multiple technologies. I mean, sensing is one thing, but making it work and making it, tell us a little bit more about the engineering of that product. Yeah.
So we at Delta have always been a believer in standards, and of course we've had BACnet. From the very beginning, we participated in the creation of that standard, and so naturally, all of our products sit on the BACnet backbone. So that product has initially been focused around integration. Over the last, say, 10 years, we've really focused on integration to different types of protocols, different types of devices, whether they be blinds, the lighting systems with DALI, or the regular HVAC control through the BACnet, or even Modbus today. All of those kind of standard protocols have become more common inside of all of our systems. And so being able to connect to all of these different types of end devices has been much easier, and that's kind of where we're headed with things. But we believe in the standards and the evolution of those standards to be able to broaden out where we can go in the future as well. So that product, yes, it provides a sensing, and of course we have our standard building automation protocols that are built into it, but it's also in the future here, and what we're seeing today is evolving as well. A lot is more focused around the Internet of Things and connections to cloud services and much higher end processing, and that product does that as well. So it's opened up more opportunity to not just stay to the traditional building automation standards and industry. You can actually go further out into the IoT area of business, which is really evolving quite quickly with cloud computing and more intelligence that can go up into the cloud and then be pushed down back into products and into the system. So we've kept it fairly broad, very flexible, so that we can have more opportunities to see how this whole evolution of smart buildings as it progresses and evolves through the next few years. So.
Well, again, very impressive. I just want to summarize it, the key features of this thing. And so I like the term that you came up with, sensor fusion. Multiple sensors used to determine room occupancy, temperature, quick response via IR temperature sensing, light level and light color sensing, user feedback via speakers or LED ring, input output to connect nearby lighting valves to ceiling valves, chill beams, or an expanding motion. In ocean option to add additional sensors and inputs, noise level indication. This is all one sensor. Now, where do we put the sensor? Do we find the cherry middle spot of the room, or do we put it on the wall? Or where do we do? Where does the sensor go?
Yeah, so the sensor, yeah, brings a lot of that together. A lot of those sensors are very useful for, of course, depending on what you want to do in the space, but it is designed to be in the ceiling. So our whole intent of that is to remove what we call wall acne on the walls, and to provide,
Nice.
to provide interior designers and architects a cleaner space. Now that ceiling mount is a little different than what a lot of some industries are used to. However, it is, basically replaces a motion sensor that may be mounted in the ceiling. It can go in the middle of the space, but the unique feature of this product is that it can actually temperature sense in different spots within the room. You can calibrate it to a particular area of the room, and it's measuring the temperatures at that spot much more accurately than on the inside of a door that opens and closes constantly. So it gives you a better temperature wherever you want to calibrate it to, which may be a desk off in one corner.
Sure.
So it's been, it's a great product because it can also bring a lot of connection points into space, whether they be the blinds, somebody wiring something to the door for the access control, or directly driving LED lights in the ceiling. It does bring a lot of that together. The other cool feature of it is the light ring and the audio output. That is really designed to be a feedback mechanism to the user in the space. If you've done something to the building, if you requested heat or you've requested a light level, there should be some kind of very subtle feedback to the user to let them know, yes, the building responded to your request. That's optional. You can use it or don't.
Is that like Alexa, or is that like a voice talking back to you, giving you feedback, voice?
Yeah, so voice is a arguable value in a shared open space. In a personal space, there's value. In open spaces, there's still arguable as to the value of that. It doesn't do voice recognition at this time, but of course, everybody has been asking for it in some cases. The best voice control systems connect to the cloud and provide services through much higher engines. So that kind of thing is something that may be supplemented externally.
So Chris, what does it do you mentioned that, would let you know that the building's responded? Just give you like a beep or a little chime or something like that, or?
Well, we find that that's kind of depends on what people want within the space. You may want a sound, you may want a tune, you may want a simple chime, you may want nothing. You may want a particular light. So it's customizable. You can engineer it either way you want.
So if I wanted like Led Zeppelin's Whole Lot of Love, that could be my thing. You could play a song for me, something like that. That's really cool. I love that. Correct. That gets back to making the building more personal, right? Mm-hmm. Owning the space.
Personalization is another great topic, because that is, of course, something that I think people would love to use as a tool to attract talent and keep their talent. And when you get into the, playing music, audio, light levels, obviously the temperature, color of light, circadian rhythm throughout the day, controlling monitors within the spaces, that is all kind of what this is geared towards.
So we can do it can change the tone of the light for circadian rhythms and stuff like that, right? Is that what you're saying? That is so cool.
Well, you can program it to do all sorts of things. So we've tied it to our regular engineering system where, you can engineer it or program it to do a variety of different things.
Well, so, do you know much about the circadian rhythms? Because I've read stuff about it, but I keep wanting to find the right light shade that would make my wife be in a good mood. Can you give me any tips on that? Like, is there a particular color that would work?
I would say experiment, but it might be a painful experiment.
Chris, it has been so far.
I'm there with you. I've tried that too.
Chris, there's a backstory. Eric was an early adopter of those lights where you could go in the bedroom and clap your hand twice and it would be red. 3 times it was blue. But So
Yeah.
Eric, he
Yeah,
was.
let's just hope they probably work better in buildings than they do in bedrooms. Let's just say that. So,
Well,
It's
well, to your point, we're seeing circadian rhythm. We're seeing there's been specs out there now saying that there's 8 scenarios of lighting that they want in the school day. That when the
Mhm.
kids come to school, they want this LED at
Yep.
this level and at this
Yep.
color and
Yep.
this tint or whatever. And we've seen that the first stage now of heating and cooling is going to be the lights changing and responding. So if you're hot and you want air conditioner on, you might hit a request for cooling, and the first thing that might happen is a blue tintish change to the LED
yeah.
light that might be the first stage of cooling now before you get to your economizer and mechanical
Right.
state.
Right. So the study of productivity within spaces has been pretty much gone,
Well
20-fold.
documented. Yeah.
It's documented. It's out there. We were trying to give the tools for people to do whatever they need to do within those types of spaces. Schools are an area that we sell very strongly into, and looking at productivity of the students throughout the day, depending upon how occupied a space is as well, and what type of class is going on in that space. It really does vary. So we've had to design quite a bit of flexibility into the systems that we've developed over the years, and we continue with that. But that's also a challenge because of the skill sets and the erosion of some knowledge as things shift. We also want to package more so that when you get the product or the system, you have some already preset configurations and systems that are much easier to engineer and put together. And then you can tweak them as you need to. So that's another big area of focus as well moving forward.
Well, Chris, let me ask you something, and you might have already said this, but would this work with other people's systems, or is it just primarily works with Deltas?
There's 2 aspects to it. We of course have the Delta side of it, but it is open. It's an open system.
Perfect.
So it's open to use as standard BACnet or as IoT protocols through MPTT as well. We've tried to make it as flexible and open as possible.
Very, very cool. So, Chris, let me ask you a question. As the Chief Technology Officer at Delta, how much time of your day is devoted to cybersecurity?
That's a great topic. It comes and goes, but when it comes, it's a very large portion of my day and my time. I think, in our industry, which tends to be a little slower than some other industries like industrial automation and infrastructure, that learning curve is happening now. There's a lot more focus around the concern. There's been a lot of cases, not only from the Target store occurrence that was a few years ago, to now a lot of ransomware situations where buildings are being ransomed. They're locked down. The access to them is locked down until the ransom is paid. So there's been a number of those cases globally. There's cases going on more frequently today than in the past. So that level of care and awareness is there from our industry. And I think a lot of it is much more heightened. So a lot of my time is spent there, and it's about communicating, how a manufacturer needs to be responsible for the systems that they deploy. We've, of course, embraced BACnet Secure Connect and been a part of that evolution over the last number of years that it's taken to get together. But we've also looked at the responsibility past that. It's not just about making sure you have a secure protocol. It's about making sure people use it and that it's done properly, and that your system can continually evolve with vulnerabilities that come up, and you have a process to handle more of awareness, better communications, better training. What do you do when there is a vulnerability? How do you get it deployed into the systems as quickly as possible? Response times. And then how do you recover from it? So we're participating much more with the whole industry in trying to communicate that out to the rest of the world to ensure that we have that level of responsibility and everybody has that expectation of the systems moving forward.
The big problem we see, you had mentioned, was the talent shortage, and it's not going to go away. And then it's even exacerbated with all the other things going on right now with everybody has a 100% excuse now. It's coronavirus. I mean, anything doesn't work, anything is late, anything, if sales are down, got the eternal coronavirus to blame now. No, but what we're seeing is there's a huge demand to get intelligence, the smartness into buildings, not just the big skyscrapers and the 40-story buildings. but the community place, you know, the malls, the church, I mean, everybody's using the energy. Does Delta play nice with those markets, let's say the light commercial market or the mid markets, you know, from 50,000 square feet down to 10 or 15,000 square feet?
Yeah, we package particular models and products for the smaller types of buildings, and try to simplify how those types of packages come together. Those are more architected solutions for certain types of buildings, certain sizes of buildings. And that is a better way to, it's a nice clean way to explain things to people, because these large institutions and the complexity that goes into their buildings is so harder to understand when you get into a small, you know, whether it's a 50,000 square foot building and the number of sensors you want and the kind of experience you want within those buildings, much more tangible. I think that is more clear to people. So yes, we certainly get into that. A lot of it revolves around still meeting some standards. When we look at the energy profile of those buildings, and those are the buildings that we really want to get a much better energy profile on. And in the future, we expect there's you know, government reporting that needs to be done on how efficient they are, and there will be we see that in the near future. Those reporting systems, the automation of those reporting systems, those connections to the grid, and even with demand response cutting
Really
back.
catching on here in the States, yeah, big time.
Yep,
Started
it
in New
is.
York, and it's we've already experienced it here in Western Pennsylvania. Yeah,
Right. Much easier to deal with in the smaller 50,000 square foot buildings. If you start looking at, you know, 1,000,000 square foot building, the rules to downgrade your load or scale back your load based on utilization in the space is much more complex to try to manage. And that's where, you know, looking at more artificial intelligence around analyzing what's going in that building and how it's used is very much something that has to be looked at closely. And that's an area of research that we have.
Well, let's talk about it a little bit, because if I'm mistaken, don't you guys also own Copper Tree Analytics, or you guys work with Copper Tree? Explain that relationship.
Copper Tree Analytics was kind of spun off of Delta Controls and ESC Automation, and so a lot of the people that actually work there are ex-Delta employees or ex-ESC employees. So we work closely with them. They are not owned by Delta Electronics, but we still work very closely with them, okay. and we have a similar vision. And of course, they're just down the road from us, so we see each other all the time, actually, in a number of different things we do. So our customer base is similar. What they have provided and what they focus on is more energy services and fault detection diagnostics and system level analytics at the top level. And where they're headed with things aligns very closely with where we see it as well.
Yeah, because it seems like you guys work very nice. I guess you can use whatever analytics package or, you know, visualization package you want to with your product, but it seemed like you guys really work very nicely with Copper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we keep each other connected, of course, in the way that we architect our system and the way that they architect their systems. Yeah.
So talk to me about artificial intelligence and how you see that sort of playing into the smart buildings and controls world.
Yep, that's of course a very hot area of research and now productization. But I think a lot of it is that acceptance of artificial intelligence. You can have artificial intelligence suggest things. Are we willing to then say, okay, you suggested this, the human has decided to actually act on that information, but to say the artificial intelligence will now adapt and do everything for you, not everything for you, but certain things for you. I think the market isn't quite ready for that, although in some areas they already do that. Obviously in the financial world, they do that quite a bit, and in other areas. That's just on the cusp of becoming quite useful, I think. So more of a self-adapting systems within buildings, simpler, smaller buildings, 50,000 square feet, much easier to do that with. Much more complex buildings, it's a little bit more challenging and more costly. So when we talk about AI, there's kind of multiple levels of it. but we're really looking at it to solve the more painful problems that are costing quite a bit more to resolve. And I think, as I mentioned on the energy management side, dealing with very complex buildings and how they're utilized, those are the kind of areas. Also, there's a massive amount of data that's being generated from buildings today compared to what we used to collect. And having an AI actually go through all of that over a long time base is something that it's really geared towards, and that's where you're going to see much more value about understanding how well that building has done over the past number of years and making adjustments to it to make even further efficiencies in it.
So, Chris, how does it work? I mean, is it like a self-learning algorithm? Because we say artificial intelligence, to me, it's such a nebulous thing. I just want to buy one of those chips and put it in my brain and be done with it. But is it a component of it like self-learning? You mentioned over a period of time. So it looks, for example, does it look at data over a period of time and then sort of acknowledge or figure out relationships or correlations, and then from there provide input to the system or to the operator?
Yeah, there's different approaches to it. If the problem that we're trying to solve is something that it needs to learn over time dynamically, you do want to feed it a lot of historical data first to begin with and start it off with a good base. Any of the learning algorithms that are useful today, and there's been a lot of research into what ones are useful, require quality data and require a lot of quality data. And so our research that we've seen so far does need a massive amount of data to get more certainty, more accuracy in predicting or in being able to act on a specific set of information. So that's one aspect of it when you're looking at the large scale of things. We're also looking at machine learning at the other end of things into the devices, which is something that we did inside of our sensor hub, where it's actually looking at a number of different sensor fusion inputs. And from that, we've built models that actually get downloaded into the product to allow that device to be able to provide more accurate information about, it might be the occupancy at certain times, it might be the temperature profile over different seasons over a longer term.
You would think, and I actually bought one of these and spent a hell of a lot of money on, because I do, stock trading and options and that kind of stuff. And I actually bought one of these things with an artificial intelligence chip in it, which was going to look at all the data, because obviously you got as much data as the stock market's been there to make predictions. It didn't work worth a flip.
Yeah, and that's just it. We can invest so much into artificial intelligence and doing all these things. It has to be useful. I think having it more focused on particular problems that you're trying to solve, proving out that, and at a cost that's reasonable. That's like anything, any technology, it comes out at a high cost. There's early adopters. There's this, the curve of the disillusionment, the trough of disillusionment, and then it comes up and becomes useful. I think that's what I look at on a daily basis, or all these technologies, and trying to pick the right timing of, okay, this one looks useful. Let's try to start adapting it into something that, we can see that fits our vision at the right time, or hold off on it.
Very cool. Well, listen, I got to ask you a question, because as a chief technology officer, I mean, what sort of books do you read? I mean, you've got a book recommendation for me and Kenny, but it sounds like you're well read, as I guess you would have to be. But what's the book of the year for you so far that you think really?
I tend to, I've always been the science fiction type.
Gotcha. Okay.
And most of the books I read, nobody, it's just that type of group that knows about those. More, what I spend a lot of time, I don't get a lot to read about the fiction and much anymore. It really does get much more technical. There's so much content out there on newer technologies, on studies I have to try to be on top of. I have a whole group behind me. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
There's a group helping to support me. So most of the things I'm reading today are more, it's more human-centered. So I'm looking at behavioral economics, behavioral studies around, if people occupy a building, if we become this, the density of people becomes that large, what is the behavioral changes that happen? And what do we,
Very
more
cool.
Studying that, because that's something I've never studied before that I love economics, but
Yeah.
it's something that becomes really such a key part of economics.
It sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So I can't recommend anything today that,
I thought you were going to say Tad
is
Williams,
scary,
because
but-
I'm reading one of his books right now for science fiction.
Mm.
The Other Land, River Blue Fire. But Eric just got back from an exciting adventure down, and I don't know if he wants to talk about that exactly right now. But you need the diversion to bring everything back to normal, reset, and come back to work and dig in. But what excites you now about the future? So all the things we talked about. So you had machine learning, artificial intelligence. I mean, just we hit them all. We went over the technologies and the sensor, O3 hub sensor. But what is your favorite? What do you like to do, and where do you, if you have a choice of budgeting and effort, resources, where do you see, where does Chris want to go with technology?
I think I have to deal with multiple levels of direction for the organizations. So to me, what excites me or has excited me predominantly over the last couple of years has been this better understanding of what's going on in the spaces, and that's what we're trying to get that message out. Yes, there's better information you can provide, you can bring more, and you can provide this better space utilization, better understanding, and then making sure the behaviors of the people and the productivity can be improved. And I think that's a great focus of ours. But it's not, to me, that's just part of it. The other large part of this is the energy. And yes, it's just an expectation. We have to have that energy connection. But I'm getting quite excited about bringing even more together around the energy front, looking at the connectivity to the grid, to the utilities. We've looked at that for countless years. In fact, this company, when it was originated, it was based on the energy crisis we had out of the 70s. But bringing it together more holistically, I'm excited to see what can be done there, and the various drive into these newer buildings that are designed for and have to sustain net zero. And more and more governments are driving to net zero and promising net zero in 2050, now pulling it back to 2030. There's that, accelerated expectation. And I think we're properly aligned to assist in a lot of that.
Chris,
forward.
you just triggered something I was going to ask, and I didn't know if it was appropriate because it's kind of off the wall, but we're hearing some of the, you said in architectural, basically paradigm changes. Do you envision, with all the net zero efforts and whatever, that we've got to transition into a volts DC world and start storing batteries and do things over PoE? I mean, I heard the presentation where they're pulling fiber and Cat6 in the same pole now with a certain cable. And that was extraordinary to me, because they got to get data there faster, whatever, and handle more. What's your thoughts on the whole PoE and the Ethernet? Of course, IP controllers, and you guys got them, but what's your thoughts on that development?
Yeah, we developed a PoE VAV controller years ago, and we still sell that today. And so we are in a number of these attempted DC buildings. The DC power distribution within the buildings is still somewhat of a challenge on the cost of it, but there are now solutions out there that are doing much better effective job at distributing the DC within the buildings. I believe in DC buildings. I think it's still a bit of a hard uphill battle to get them more common. I certainly see the efficiency differences within the spaces, and all of the products and devices now going DC. I think there's a tipping point that we're going to hit where it becomes much more common. So I'm excited about it because I think it also makes the integration of things in the spaces and within the building much easier.
Wow.
But you still have to deal with a fairly large mass of energy that has to be distributed within the building.
Thomas Edison is about to come out of his grave and give you a big kiss, man.
Yeah.
so our guest is Chris Kwomg, the Chief Technology Officer from Delta Controls. Chris, man, this is a lot of fun, man. So you live in Vancouver. Tell us about Vancouver. How do you like living there? Were you born and raised there?
Yeah, I wasn't. I was born and raised in the middle of the continent.
Okay.
Where the wind blows, there's big skies, and at this time of the year, extremely cold. And I moved out here about 30 years ago.
Sounds like Winnipeg.
Yeah, well, not there, but close. Farmlands, let's say. Saskatchewan, to be more specific. But yeah. I lived out here long. I love it out here. The West Coast is it's actually where my origins of my family are from.
Nice.
And I would not want to live anywhere else except at certain times of the year where it's warmer down south.
Oh, absolutely. Well, how's Vancouver doing with this coronavirus? Anything going on in the city that?
It's a tough one. Of course, in proximity to Washington State,
Yeah.
and there's just this whole heightened awareness of it here on the West Coast. I think, with our connections to Asia and the Pacific, of course, we have a higher risk. I think we have an excellent healthcare system here in Canada and here in BC. So what we need to do is have some trust in them, but make sure that we don't overload their system, which is the biggest concern. It's a crazy world today. The last couple days has been
Well, you guys
crazy.
canceled everything. We've canceled everything. They've canceled NBA, the hockey, college basketball. I mean, every single thing. March, the St. Patrick's Day parade in schools.
Yeah.
I think there's only a few more schools that are actually in attendance, but I'm getting these dings and whatever. And it's we just found out in Pittsburgh, where I'm from, that there was a potential spread inside of a hospital. They mishandled something and exposed people to 100 people. So now here it's in Pittsburgh, rambling on. But yeah, you're right. It's a crazy world. Well, I tell you what, I'm very impressed, Chris.
Me too.
We talked to a lot of people that really talk the talk, know the jobs inside and out. But the passion you have is very evident.
Yeah.
And then having excitement towards the future, and then helping our Controltrends community grapple with all the technology and like Eric always says, you got to filter this out. There's too much of it, and how much of it's relevant. You said something I really liked that was useful, and adapt that useful, in the time period where it's going to be meaningful. In other words, it can be technology that's there and you like it, but putting it to play right now is just not sensible.
Exactly.
Fuse that in when it makes the biggest impact.
Right. So augmented reality, virtual reality, a perfect example. At what I see great value in it. I think the prices come down, and I think now it's starting to take off. Virtual reality, I think, is still out there, but it's something that you have to time right and look at the costs and the values it has for the market that you can actually see out there. So we're being careful about that.
Well, as Kenny's fond of saying, Ready Player One. That was one of his favorite science fiction books about virtual reality.
That got me started on this whole wave.
Yeah. But Chris, it's been so great having you on the show. We'd love to get you to come back on anytime you want to come on. You've been a great guest. Thank you so much. Chris Kwomg, Chief Technology Officer at Delta Controls. Now, Chris, I'm assuming it's delta.com, right, for our audience who wants to get
deltacontrols.com.
Deltacontrols.com. There you go, brother. Right. Well, listen, thank you so much, Chris.
Oh, thank you, gentlemen. It has been great.
Kenny Smyers, man, I really like Chris Kwomg. What an interesting character.
Sure is. Again, no wonder Delta has such success, and just to have the passion and just the obvious intelligence this gentleman has, and I really love hearing conversations about smart buildings, intelligent buildings. It makes me feel like I'm in the right industry. It makes me feel like we're right on target with many things, because everything he said was right on target. It was a 10 sweet spot. But I love some of the concepts about wall acting. I had not heard that before for sensors on the wall. I had not heard of the way he explained about the trough of disillusionment. How technology is great, but there's obviously optimal times to put it in, and when to bear the expense versus the market, how you get your return on your investments at that level. It's really interesting to hear some of those guys talk about it. So it's a great interview.
Yeah, well, it is. And I think one of the really cool things about doing this show is we get to talk to really cool, interesting people. Last time we had somebody from Delta, it was Robert Hummendinger, and he was a really interesting cat too. And then of course, remember our good friend Una de Boer back when she was with Delta, she did the marketing. So cool people. Delta seems to have a way of really finding really cool people. And listen, somebody I was thinking about the other day, an old friend, and I think he watches this show, but Luis Melgares from Neptronic, if you're out there, hey man, we're thinking about you, brother. Keep on keeping on. He's another one of the really good people in our industry. So Luis, we miss you, brother.
Yeah, they were up in Canada at a Canadian version of the AHR up there in Toronto, I believe. I wonder if they're impacted like we are. Everything. The NMFT got canceled down in Baltimore this week, and that's a huge show. That's a big show in the Baltimore DC area, where you have all those universities and everything. It's just one of the best networking events. We had planned to go down there, but hey, the life goes on. So
Life goes on. All right, brother. Well, I think with that, we're going to call cookies here, man. So
cookies.
cookies. There you go. That's another week on Control Talk Now, your smart buildings videocast and podcast, not deterred by the coronavirus as we power through it with our hand sanitizer and our mask that we're not wearing and our isolation, but we're still coming to you. So with that, a special thanks to our guest this week, Chris Kwomg, Chief Technology Officer from Delta Controls. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Remember, be bold, stay in control, stay safe, and we will see you next week.
And wash your hands. Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Case Myers. Wash your hands. There you go, brother. Nice. All right, buddy.